It's Primus Tracks with Josh, Freddie, and Sawyer.
What a couple of dumb shits.
Hello, Primates. Josh here. We were thrilled when today's guest confirmed his appearance on the podcast. He is enshrined lyrically in Primus canon, and he was there for the beginnings of what became the men of extreme power that we know today. And he's a fascinating person in his own right. Please enjoy our talk with Curtis Gomez, a.k.a. CG the Mexican. That's right, CG the Mexican. You know, the old days, because Soya's always talking about the old guard, and it feels to me like you are the oldest guard. Not in a pejorative way.
No. I mean, you're probably close. I mean, you know, I met Les when he was 19, and I was just out of the service. I was like 22.
Oh, man.
And he was doing sound checks at Analog Digital Associates. You know, these guys made, you know...
ADA.
Yeah. Well, yeah, ADA. At that time, you know, they were making digital delays, and actually it was even pre-digital delay. It was actually the analog stuff. The digital stuff was, you know, coming. You know, I mean, this is 1982, right? So,
oh, wow.
You know, and ADA was basically, you know, kind of a garage startup. I mean, it was it wasn't in a garage, but I mean, it wasn't much bigger than a garage, the place we were in.
Okay.
Single roll-up door. Bunch of 4 or 5 dudes sitting around,
a couple, you know, a few little offices upstairs. You know, it was pretty small footprint, you know. But Les was doing sound checks, and I had started there as a tech, and well, actually, I got hired as a technician, but then they said, well, you know, we wanted you to work on the digital products, and they're not ready, so, you know, why don't you be an assembler, you know, till they, you know, we can put you on a tech bench. And I was like, well, how long are we talking about? And the guy was, you know, 2 or 3 months. And I was like, all right, I needed a job. So I was sweeping the floor on the second day. And one of the other technicians had an issue with one of the units he was testing. And I just looked over at the oscilloscope and I said, oh, I know what that is. You got a solder bridge and a couple of TTL outputs. And the guy totally blew me off, you know, like, yeah, right, you know. And the guy that was the supervisor for manufacturing at the time, Dennis, was like, no, he's probably right. Why don't you flip the circuit board over and see if there's a solder bridge there? And so he did, and there was. And so he goes, why don't you get on the tech bench tomorrow? So,
nice.
You know, like the very next day I was, you know, I only did assembly for like 2 days, you know, so that was good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Broom to oscilloscope in like one troubleshoot.
Yeah. And the guy that blew me off was a total asshole. I mean, he was... I don't know. He went to Heald, which was just like a 2-year technical trade school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he just thought he was like mentally superior than everybody in the shop. And it was just funny. I don't know. Just working with somebody that, you know, thought so highly of himself, and I could, you know, I don't know. I could do circles around him as far as teching, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like this is something that you're, I mean, given your line of work over the years and what you're doing now, it sounds like this is something you're really good at. So when you were a kid,
I've been, it goes way back. I mean, that's what I started doing in the military. I was doing, you know, like, you know, working on radios and field artillery computers. And,
oh man,
you know, I wanted to do something technical when I went in the service, and, you know, just because I thought, well, it'll benefit me when I get out, and it has. And I just fell into audio, you know, so that was kind of, you know, that was just luck, you know, but it's paid off very well, you know.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
CG, in the Grapevine book, Les refers to you as a sort of manager in the early days. Is that right?
Yeah. So let me just tell you how we met. So anyway, he was doing sound checks, and he comes up to me one day and he goes, hey, these guys were supposed to go to the NAMM show with me, the National Association of Music Merchants trade show down in Anaheim. He goes, but they bailed. Do you want to go? I got tickets. And I go, I didn't even know him, you know, and I just go, yeah, okay, let's go, you know. So it turned into a cocaine-fueled road trip. Yeah, I know. I don't want to make it sound like we were drug heads, but you know, it was the 80s and cocaine was okay.
Yeah.
I still think it's okay. I just don't do it anymore. But
likewise,
yeah.
bro.
So anyway, you know, Les started, he bought I'm sure you guys have all seen the story on Wikipedia where he bought the Lynn drum machine and he, started writing tracks, So right around that time, he's like, hey, I'm thinking about forming this band Primate, would you help out? And I go, yeah, sure.
Uh-huh.
My brother and I were just lugging equipment. And then, my brother is Link, the, sculptor for the album covers, right?
Lance Montoya,
So, so Lance was doing, he was sculpting stuff and, Les goes, hey, can you, make me something, for this potential album cover that's coming out. And, so that, we were all working together at ADA. My brother was doing shipping and receiving, Les doing sound checks. I was doing the technician stuff, and then, they were playing as Primate for a while, but then there was a band called The Primates.
Right.
And, he threatened to sue Les, we're on the verge of national, discovery, blah,
Everybody remembers the Primates.
Yeah. And then, I know, right? And then, Les he kind of freaked out. He was almost ready to like, oh, I'm just going to, screw it. Who's going to know who we are? Because they were selling, he was selling tapes and stuff and, and T-shirts. And we were actually making T-shirts in my apartment. He built a 4-color silkscreen jig and we were just buying.
Of course. Well, he's had a few of them over the years back.
Yeah, well, there was a T-shirt place just down the street from where we worked at ADA there in Oakland, and they sold us their rejects, right? So these were like one sleeve's like 1 inch shorter than the other. The hem's lopsided, or it's not sewn on at all. And so we got those for like $2 a piece. And, we were silk screening them, and we even sold the ones that were screwed up. And we were doing stuff for, like Faith No More, and God, I can't even remember who else, but I think Monkey Rhythm, and we just started even the rejects. We would do test screens on them, and so we'd have like 3 or 4 bands on there, and I started wearing them, and people were like, "Oh, I want one of those," So we were selling, our scraps, what I mean, like for good money,
making enough money to go buy some food and some beers.
It was quite the lifestyle. I mean, we were when he was living with me and sleeping on the couch. I mean, we were. I was laid off. Well, okay, I'll take that back. I was fired. I got into it with the owner of ADA, and he just let me go. And so I just started working on doing amp mods with a buddy of mine, and just miscellaneous electronics work at the house.
Wait, let's discuss that. That's Go Mad Productions, I think it was.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
That's when I met you.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right.
So we only built, I don't know, a few amps under Go Mad, but we, we were modding a lot of Marshalls and stuff like that, adding, stages to them and, effects inserts and things like that. And, Todd eventually started doing his own line. I don't know if you guys have heard of Langner amplifiers, but Todd did preamps and EQs and, and he's got he had a pretty good reputation. I say had because he unfortunately got out of the business, and then he, I don't know, I think he had Lyme disease and he killed himself.
Oh, geez.
Actually in my backyard.
Oh, man.
Damn.
Yeah. Luckily I wasn't home, but Lance actually found him in the backyard,
Bummer.
Sorry, I know this interview is going all over the place.
It's all good, man. But hold on. So now when you build or left ADA and you started Go Mad, that's when I met you.
Yeah, so that was like 86.
And you were modifying the ADAs post ADA production, and
we were modding the MP1s, the preamps, adding
and then the MP2, I think, was the one that Les was using exclusively for a while.
Yeah.
MP1 was more the guitar one, and the MP2 was the newer version.
Yeah, they had like I thought it was MB1. I can't even remember.
I think it was MP. I think you're right with that.
Was it? Only had a single 12AX7 tube, and so what Todd and I were doing, we were adding a second tube to that. There was just enough room in there to squeeze a tube in, and so we were doing those mods, and like I say, Marshalls, and it was mainly Todd's design because he was the musician. I mean, technically, I knew how to create a tube stage, but he was the one that had the tones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Set up the distortion and stuff like that.
Wow.
Right.
Are you familiar with the legend of the ADA preamp that Les has or used then? Because it was in the 90s, I remember as a kid, scouring the internet for everything I could find about Primus. That was the thing that everybody pointed to and they went, what are his settings on that? Or what is he using? He's getting the most incredible tone and that sort of thing. It's a legend in its own right.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. Well, I don't know. The thing that with the ADA digital products, it was they were pretty loosely aligned. I mean, we didn't have a lot of sophisticated test equipment, so a lot of it was okay. We get it in a certain range on an oscilloscope, for certain, amplifier gains and offsets, and then and then we listen to him and go, yeah, that sounds pretty good,
Uh-huh.
And so Les, when he was, buying stuff from ADA, and like I said, he was doing sound checks. I mean, he was picking the cream of the crop, right? Like he was going through, listening to 100 of them going, ooh, this one sounds good,
Yeah.
And that's the one I'm taking home, so.
Yeah, but you did the mods back then before anybody knew what modding a off the shelf at a music store product was. No one was doing
there were
that.
other guys. I'm trying to remember some of their names because God, we're talking like almost 40 years ago. But
I mean, that's the first time I ever heard about. Obviously, dude, like you're saying, there's tons of dudes that were doing it. It's the first time I came in contact with like helping this band. I thought was
yeah. Well, I remember there was
like
this
Les was like, yeah, Go Mad Productions took care. There was a sticker on Les's MP2 that said Go Mad Productions. I was like, whoa, what's that? He's like, that's CG, man. It's all Siege, man. He makes my shit killer. It's like, all right.
Well, I helped, but I mean, I'm just trying to remember the guy's name. But there was a guy that was fairly famous and he was charging really big money. I think Todd
Pete Cornish. No, he built pedal boards.
No, if you said his name, I'd remember it. But I remember, people were bringing us that guy. That guy is like $600 modification,
right.
And we look what he did for this distortion mod, right? And it was just like a couple of diodes, that he threw in there, and we're talking about, like not even 20 cents worth of parts,
right on,
and it sounded like crap. It did distort, but I mean, it's solid state distortion versus tube distortion, right? So
right.
Yeah, so we were actually taking his mods out that he charged people hundreds of dollars for back then, and actually giving him a good mod,
Wow.
And what were the guys up in? Oh God, what was that other amp company up north?
Mesa Boogie.
Yeah, Mesa Boogie. Because I actually applied up there. And I showed the guy an amp that I built, and I think it freaked him out, because he was like, because he even told me, he goes, I don't believe you built a 200-watt amp, in this size of a chassis. And we brought it in, they put it on a bench, right? And then went, wow. And then he never called me again, because I think he was, he even told me up front, he didn't, he'd had people steal his,
Yeah. It's tricky like that, though, dude.
I was going to do that.
And on that note, Les has always been extremely secretive about what his tone is, and he's even gone so far, even since back when those days when you were modding his ADAs, that he'll lie about what it is, just so people are chasing their tails in the wrong direction, just so that he doesn't.
No, I haven't seen his. I haven't really looked at his setup in a long time.
It's changed many, many times, and we did a podcast on here with a bass player friend of these guys. Is for one song, and this guy knew 1992. Let's play this. 1984. Let's play that. Let's play. His amp was this, and it was that, and then he was going through this rigmarole of like he knew everything, and I was like. Going through the timeline going, yeah, okay. Yeah,
sounds like a stalker.
You're kind of right on some of that stuff, but you're reading on interviews that aren't, he's like, no, dude, I read an interview with Les that he said in 1988, he was using this. And I was like, that's not what he was using.
I don't even know. You said he might be misleading people, but I mean,
yeah, totally.
Sometimes his memory is just not,
No.
I don't know, man. I've caught him. I remember, just not even recently, he was like telling some story and he was saying, yeah, it was so-and-so and I go, dude, it was not. It was you and I, I was the one that was.
I mean, we all have those. Okay. We all have those hiccups, but I divulged to him. I go, Les had the Go Mad Productions mod, and he goes, that. I was like, you don't know.
Yeah.
Curtis Gomez.
He had what was that guy? Was it Stephen Rabe? I think SWR or SRW.
Oh yeah, SWR. Yeah, he had that amp, the redhead one. Not the redhead, but he had the red-faced SWR at that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, because we
did SWR with the ADA MP2 and the EVPA speaker.
Because we were at we were at NAMM. And I saw this guy demoing that amp, and I was like, dude, you got to come check this out. This thing sounds outrageous.
Yep.
It was just so clean and it was so fat. It just had tons of bandwidth.
And that was a multi-solid / tube amp, right? It was a little of both, or was that
I can't remember, man. It's been, it's been so long.
When I first met you guys, when I first was their little roadie kid, he had that red-faced SWR was the one he had. With the MP2.
Yeah. I know he used it for a while, and then like I said, I'm not familiar with his setup at all now.
Yeah.
Well, you definitely sent dozens, if not hundreds, maybe thousands of aspiring bass players or people who wanted to sound just like Les Claypool down this road that they would, there's a pot of gold there and they're never going to find it.
That's right. And CG, it's your fault, man.
So you're the guy.
Well, it's too bad, like when Todd passed, his mom sold like all the schematics and all the components that we had. Because I basically gave everything to Todd at one point because I was like, dude, I got a family. I need a job with benefits. I can't just be, doing amp mods out, out of the house,
Yeah.
And so I went and became a radio engineer. And
Live 105, baby.
I moved away, from the whole audio thing. I mean, obviously, audio still involved, but just a different niche.
Yeah. That's where I got my first swatch. Was from your Live 105 box.
Oh yeah, it's fun. Yeah, I had quite the collection. Yeah. So we were giving swatches away from KITS is was the like the Bay Area alternative station at the time. And swatches were, pretty fashionable back then. I don't know if you guys are even old enough to remember that shit, but
I do. I remember.
Okay. So
I got a pop swatch out of you, man.
We had like a closet full of them at the radio station, So they gave me a few, and I I'll be honest, I boosted a few. So I ended up with a collection.
Dude, I remember now. Don't forget when I would show up to that little apartment in San Pablo, where you guys lived.
San Leandro.
San Leandro, that's
San Leandro, yeah.
And Evil Dead was always on, of course.
Yeah.
It was either Evil Dead or Ika Mouse was on the VHS player.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, there was a 7-Eleven around the corner from the house, so we would just wake up, bake, fall back asleep. We would leave the house about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock, head over to the city, eat something in the city, and then we just hit up the clubs, and they'd let us in for free because they all knew Les. Primus was playing a lot of local clubs. And then we'd get home, like around 3 a.m., go to the 7-Eleven, pick up some Ben and Jerry's, watch TV, take some more bong hits, pass out, wake up and start all over again.
Dude, it was so funny when I would show up at that place. And that time I got that watch out of you. Remember, I was bringing the Lotus Bakery bread and granola from that bakery I worked at.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And I would bring Les the Sesame Miller bread, or was that you? And one of you guys like that?
No, that was Les. Yeah.
Maple cashew granola. Had too. I would bring.
That was good stuff.
And you were like, bro, pick any watch out of this box right here, bro. You can have one, man. You're fucking hella cool, bro. I was like, right on, man. Thanks, dude. And I got a pop swatch for you that day.
Well, I hear you're still cool, Tim. So
yeah.
Oh, no. God, no.
It sounds like at that moment in time, you and Les and Link were pretty darn tight. So
Link's my brother. Yeah. So we're tight. Yeah.
Yeah. I would imagine that's good. Brothers got to stay together. So you guys had this little crew where you guys were pretty tight and doing a lot of stuff together. We know that Les gives everybody nicknames. So did Link come from Les for Lance, and then did he give you CG
actually,
the Mexican?
That came from my mom, because there was a TV show called Lancelot Link Secret Chimp, and so my mom called him Lancelot. And then Les kind of picked up on that. I guess he threw in the Link, but I mean, it's, it more evolved from my mom,
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the origin of CG the Mexican as a title for you. How'd that come about?
Well, my initials are Curtis Gomez, so he just called me CG,
Right.
and then that evolved into Siege. So even to this day, I use Siege or Siege Demon as a username.
That's
okay.
funny.
Yeah,
I always call you, every time I see you, I call you Siege, just because of the old days. Nobody really called you that.
It's funny,
for the
the whole
old guard,
Siege Demon thing, man. Like all these gamer guys, they're like, "Oh, dude, that's such a cool name," and I'm like, yeah, it doesn't evolve out of the gaming though. It's
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a different source. Yeah.
Well, remember, now Fonz and Fred, I think, called you Siege too. Like me and him knew that you were Siege.
Yeah, well, Les was the one that started calling me. It was just CG, and then he shortened it to Siege.
Yeah. And that's how I met you, when you were CG the Mexican, but it was Siege. And that was just, I was Soya, you were Siege.
Alliterative pair.
I kind of tease him because I'm at, I do have Mexican heritage, but I also have, I'm Irish, I'm Spanish, I'm Native American, I'm like, I'm just like everybody else in America. I'm a mutt,
Yeah.
Of course. I was really bummed out because at that moment when they wrote The Toys Go Winding Down with Todd and Jay was like the first time they were writing that song. And Les would always sing, Tim Soya is a friend of mine. We used to sit around the house watching Evil Dead. And then when the record came out, it was like, CG the Mexican is a friend of mine. I was like, oh man, I'm
very curious about that, CG. What was your reaction when you heard the name drop?
I think he was all right, Tim, don't be offended, but I think he was pandering to Tim, because when he wrote the lyrics, it was CG the Mexican.
Yeah, I know. He might have said it a couple nights at the Omni, and I was honored. I was like, all right, I'm in.
Yeah.
I got my name on a lyric, and then all of a sudden the album came out, or the recording, and it's like, man, CG's way more important than me. I knew it.
Well, it's funny though. I mean, I've really haven't, claimed to be that person that often,
Yeah.
In a couple of, sometimes I'll get in some forum where these guys are talking about, they're trying to interpret Les's lyrics, and sometimes it's just, it's ridiculous. It's the whole Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds was LSD. And, and I'll be like, you guys don't know what the fuck you're talking about. We were just high and he was writing shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So don't try to turn in some deep ass, metaphysical,
which we're guilty of here sometimes.
The funniest thing is,
that's what we do.
But then these guys were like, well, this guy claims he's CG. I don't know. And it's like, yeah, okay.
But dude,
never mind.
The best thing that we're both sitting there is I would show up at that apartment and you were CG and we were watching Evil Dead and it was going down, dude.
Yeah.
I understand it more than all these kids that try to like dissect it into some other deeper meaning. It's like, no, there's a couch that Les said, dude, did someone screw it on that couch, dude? That's CG's couch right there, man. I was like,
yeah, he ruined that couch actually. So I'll tell you the worst thing. Here's the worst thing. So the phone is ringing and it's in the living room right next to the couch. And it's like, we'd been out all night and it's like 8 a.m. in the morning, the phone's ringing and he's not picking it up. And it just keeps ringing and ringing. I'm like, fuck. So finally I get up and I answer the phone. They go, oh, is Les there? And I'm like, fuck. Right. And I go, dude, wake up. The phone's for you. So I hand him the phone and I'm standing there for a second. And I look down and I'm standing in something wet and I'm standing on this sock.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, what the fuck? I go, did you jack off in your sock? And he just looks at me with some grin like, yeah. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, asshole. Get the fuck out.
Dude. What apartment, man. That's so funny. I was there for a bunch of times, man. It was hilarious, dude.
Yikes.
Yeah, well, he's over there having sock sex and I'm standing in his puddle. Fuck that. Yeah.
Oh,
CG,
man.
I am very curious about how you felt when you heard the name drop in the lyrics for the first time.
Well, the band wasn't very big, you know
Mhm.
what I mean? So I mean, I thought it was cool, and we were buddies. And I think at the time too, like our relationship was a little bit different, because I think I had been in the service. I had traveled the world quite a bit, and I think Les looked at me at that time, a little bit kind of like an older brother, a little bit, I mean, obviously not now. I mean, we're grown up, and he's doing his thing, I'm doing mine. I'm not trying to say he's less than a peer or anything, but at that time. So I don't know that I really gave it a whole lot of credence, just because the band wasn't that big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was
And-
cool, but it was like,
Even when he would switch it up to my name, I wasn't like, oh man, I made it. I was just kind of like, all right.
Yeah.
I'm working my butt off for these guys, and they're my buddies now. And dudes actually dropped my name in a song, but I didn't give a fuck. It's like, who cares?
Did it feel different when the album came out? When Frizzle
No,
Fry was
because I'd heard
out?
it like a million times already. There wasn't a gig that I didn't go to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I can rattle off a million, tiny little clubs we played in Berkeley, Oakland, San Francisco.
Dude, I packed all that shit in and out of all of them at that moment. Remember?
Oh yeah. Well, even before you came along, Soya, though, Lance and I were plugging that shit.
Yeah, and Trouse was kind of a roadie for a bit too, right?
Yeah.
And he became the permanent, obviously, but
they were doing a show at the Berkeley Square, and this was after like they recorded the album there, but the lighting guy wasn't there, and Les was just like, "Hey, you want to do lights?" And I'm like, "Okay, I don't know." How
many buttons are there?
Yeah, and that's really what it was. It was a small lighting board, with about 12 buttons on it. But I knew the music so well, I could syncopate with the band,
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
So after the show, like Adam Gates from Monkey Rhythm at the time was like, dude, he tells us CG did these fantastic lights, best lights I've ever seen. And so so then Les was like, why don't you do lights all the time? And okay, so I just became the lighting guy for a few years.
That's hilarious, dude.
Yeah.
And
then I, of course I got, I graduated to bigger boards. I even thought about, kind of maybe doing it as a career. And then when I got into radio, I was kind of like, this is kind of cool too, so I decided to do that instead. And, I kind of had a thing where, I was Les's boss basically at ADA. And if I was working for Primus, he'd be my boss. So I was like, that's all right. I mean, when I was doing lights most of the time, it was just, we rarely got paid, and we rarely got paid well. Even more rare. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You get more than $20 because I got that about every 4 shows.
Well, there was a couple of times where, like, the Omni got, or the I-Beam did really well, and I made like $100 or $120.
Man,
but I mean those
were the nights that I got $20 for all
that was
this
few
shit
by
myself down that ramp behind the Omni stage, dude.
Yeah,
I get it in the truck and Les's gray van. Remember that funny old work van with the cake?
Yeah. I
and
remember.
He's like, hey, Soya, here's $20, man. Thanks, buddy. It's like, Jesus, what? All right.
Well, I mean, even for him, it was, like making like $800, was like, oh my God,
dude, I didn't complain. I'm not complaining now. I'm just saying that's how it was, man. And it was like, I was stoked to get $20, man.
Yeah. I mean, at the time, we considered them good paychecks. You know what I mean? Where he made where the band made like $1,600. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like, holy moly,
CG, can I ask you about?
You can ask me anything.
I'm curious about a part of your life that gets mentioned in the book. I guess this was prior to the military. All the fights that you used to have with skinheads. What was that all about?
No, that was actually post-military, but
okay.
So, I grew up in San Leandro, in the Davis Street area, and it's a kind of predominantly Hispanic area. So, I would venture to say I was sort of a cholo. You know, I don't know if you guys know that term.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? You know, I was into lowriders. I wasn't really a lowrider myself, but you know, I was in that culture, right? And so anyway, yeah, if you've seen some of the earlier pictures that I posted on Facebook, you know, on that Primus fan page, you know, my hair's combed back. I got a goatee and a mustache. You know, I'm looking pretty gangster. And
Yeah.
so,
you know, finals, man.
So, I mean, I wrestled and boxed and took martial arts since I was pretty young.
Oh, wow.
I was even on the boxing team and the taekwondo team when I was in the military. And, you know, I pretty much kept stuff up until in my 40s, you know, I mean, I was, you know, I got several belts in several martial arts, but, yeah, so we were at the Mabuhay back in the early days. It was you know, a small pay to play club in San Francisco on Broadway, across the street from the Stone. And these skinheads, we were leaving a gig and these skinheads tried to steal some equipment and we were able to kind of, you know, tamper it down. And then one of them pushed a friend of mine, a female that was there. She just came to see the show. And I was just like, all right, that's it. You know, and I just started wading into the crowd and just knocking these dudes out. And that's where, you know, kind of like my other nickname came, Pitbull, you know, because, you know, yeah. So, I mean, God, I don't want to sound like a total asshole, but, you know, a lot of skinheads back in those days, just really no level of respect. And I just didn't have any patience for it, you know? So,
it's pretty senseless the way those guys were at a lot of those situations, though.
Yeah.
They just were trying to instigate violence and they didn't care what they had to do it.
Yeah. And it's funny because if you want to get knocked out, I'm the guy that's going to do it, you know what I mean?
So was it a common occurrence?
And you know, there was a few times, and all those situations was almost, you know, like I tolerated what they were doing and saying up until they usually touched a female, and that's when I was like, all right, you know,
the trigger hit, the switch flicked,
gone too far.
Wow,
you know.
So was this kind of a common occurrence or a thread throughout those years?
I mean, it was just because back in those days there were a lot of skinheads, you know, hanging out up on Broadway. And Primus did have a small skinhead following, you know.
Wow.
I mean, it wasn't always the same people. I mean, it wasn't like, you know, the same group of people come to all the shows, but, you know, Berkeley had a pretty big skinhead population. The city had a big skinhead population. It was just the time, you know, and, you know, the fact that we, you know, kind of clubs we were playing in those early days, you know, just.
Well, there was no real, like, there was no unity within everybody to try to retaliate against it peacefully, you know, yet. Like mid 80s,
well, you know what?
up in the late 80s, those motherfuckers would show up and just take over, and everybody was too scared to stand up to them, you know?
Well, I think a lot of it, too, was that we were attracting a college crowd. And so, you know, you got these kids that are, you know, they're just a year or two out of high school, a lot of them. And, you know, you got these intimidating looking skinheads, and most of them really, they don't know how to fight. You know, they just look scary.
Yeah.
And they're scary because there's, you know, 5 or 6 or 10 or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, they get bold when they're together, just like any mob, you know?
Yeah. But I mean, you know, Victim's Family, we played many shows at Gilman Street back then in the mid 80s. And
Gilman was
and that those motherfuckers would always show up, you know, and like 8 or 10 of them would just start storming everybody, like fronting them, you know, like, what's up, motherfucker? You want to go? And it's like, I'm just standing here, dude. What are you talking about?
I know. And then, you know, they were always the most violent guys in the mosh pits, right?
Yeah.
You know, they were the guys kicking people with steel toe boots and just.
And then all of a sudden, And by the early 90s, it's like those guys got squashed, you know, by the pits, man. It's like, you guys can get the fuck out of here because we're trying to have fun and you don't belong in this Primus pit. Get the fuck out, you know. And they got squeezed out. It was cool, you know.
Yeah, and I do remember we did a show in LA and I think it was at the Palladium. And there was just a really, I mean, unusual amount of skinheads at that show. And even Les was kind of like, what the fuck, you know, like, what am I doing to attract these guys? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think it was just, you know, kind of a coincidence, you know?
Yeah. I mean, those guys would just go with what was going on and just try to make a presence. They didn't know who Primus was. There's no way.
You know? Well, some of them did, but I mean, I don't think that was like their
their
main-
motivation was not to go to a Primus show. It was there's something hip and happening going on.
They were going to see Flipper and some of the other really hardcore punk
Black
bands,
Flag.
and yeah.
Okay.
The real good bands.
So
Yeah.
So it does sound like it was kind of a product of the area / time, but man, it sounds like it's pretty damn wild at that time.
Yeah.
Wild times.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, San Francisco was, it's all gentrified now. You can't even find a good Mexican restaurant, unless it's, you're buying a $12 taco.
Come on, man.
It's
La
really
Cumbre
bad.
and El
I don't even go
and El
into
Toro are
the
still
anymore.
there, man. Come on, we go to El Toro every time we're down in the mission.
Yeah. No, well, that's okay. Getting a burrito or something, but I mean, a lot of the cool little places we used to go eat at, they've turned into like shoe boutiques or whatever. So
Or the $12
lost
taco.
a lot of its kind of grungy charm that it had. So
Yeah.
But
Wow.
in those days, I mean, like there were the Navy bases were around.
Right.
Pawn shops, prostitution was
Yeah.
prevalent. I mean, there was it was kind of like Times Square back in the 70s. I mean,
Right.
nuts. It was nuts.
Wow.
Yeah, man. Like the moment that Primus got to that point where they were playing the Warfield, and we would be at the shows, hanging out and setting up, and you'd walk out the back door in that Tenderloin back there, back in that early 90s, or late 80s. It was like, whoa. I mean, dude, you had to like check yourself to look over every shoulder at that point. In that
No, it was scary. I mean, there was a couple of big projects out that way.
It was trippy in the Tenderloin back then, I mean, it's
well, it's
still
those.
gritty, but now it's not like that anymore. These days.
They still have a lot of the like kind of like the flop house hotels.
Mhm.
Hourly rate. Yeah.
I mean, if you step in poop out there, it's more likely to be human than dog.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
Well, I mean, I was working in the city, not that many years ago for Major League Baseball, and I mean, I'd be like, God, what is that? You just like that human. I mean, like,
Oh man.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
well, it's a symptom of San Francisco too. Not having public restrooms, but having a lot of homeless. So,
Yeah.
I say it
Bunch
every
of my
time.
buddies were on the crew at the Warfield, and that side door at the Warfield is right there at Taylor and Market, right? And
Oh yeah.
the Tenderloin unloads right on that block, right? Like the gnarls. And
What's funny is there's like 5-star hotels in that area.
oh,
Yeah.
totally.
It's
Totally.
just nuts. Yeah.
Oh, dude,
It's just nuts.
one night my buddies are telling me that Michael Franti and Spearhead or whatever are playing the Warfield, and their bus pulls up and they got a trailer. They're just like, but they're doing the Warfield, and Michael Franti steps off the bus barefoot on the street right there.
Oh, bad idea.
And like my friend who's like one of the loader dudes, he's like, "Hey man, I don't know if this is the right place to be barefoot." He's like, "Bro, I touch the earth everywhere I go, man. I have to be barefoot and touch the earth." He goes, "Man, this ain't the earth, bro. This is the fucking Tenderloin. I would put some
That's
slippers
easy.
on, dude."
It's not dirt. It's
And Frankie
easy.
walked in and didn't even. I was like, "Man, I wouldn't go barefoot anywhere
Oh,
near
no.
that place."
Does
Dude.
he still have feet?
I don't know. He might have got
Yeah.
gangrene after that night.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Man. So at that time, it's very interesting at that time because the band is growing. You're good friends with those guys. You're doing lights. You're doing all kinds of stuff for them. So kind of being there, and Soya, you're in at this time, I imagine, too, because that's where Soya always points to the sausage demo. He always points to that as that's where things really took off. So you're still in the picture at that point. You're still helping out and being friends with these guys. So what was it kind of like to see it happening to friends of yours kind of catching this momentum and in the music scene in general?
Well, I always thought Les was very talented. I mean, I'd been working at ADA, since '82. Been around. I mean, just a ton of musicians. You know what I mean? We had a lot of endorsees. Les and I would even take equipment out, to, the Cow Palace, the Oakland Coliseum, and demo equipment for a lot of bands, or these guys were already endorsees. So we would say, hey, we got a new product. Can we come by and show it to you? And then go, can we get some tickets? And so, as they grew, I don't know. I think it just seemed really natural and organic to me. I wasn't, I don't know, maybe I'm just spoiled because I don't know any better. I mean, I've just had a lot of cool gigs in my life and done a bunch of cool stuff. And, so I don't look at it really special. I know it is, when I look back on it, but at the time I was just like, hey, I'm just,
well, dude, I think
out with my buddies doing stuff. You know what I mean?
PG, but I think what Josh is asking, which what I'll attest to, is you were there for the Primate moment, which I was not. I got into Primus right before that sausage demo got recorded with Matt. But what I think Josh is asking you, when you saw that crux of when that demo came out and Les started peddling that thing around to kids at the shows, everything just started snowballing, dude. That demo was a game changer, man.
Yeah, but like I said, I just kind of it's kind of like me getting fat, if I don't notice it till I look at a picture that's from 2 years ago.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right on.
It just kind of creeps up on you, right?
Yeah.
So I think the biggest moment for me, I had already been living in LA and I was working in motion picture, and I came up, I think it was like 97 for the New Year's Eve show where they were headlining the Coliseum with Tool.
Yeah, I was there. Yep.
Yeah.
That was killer. Yep.
And I was just and I'm like, Jesus, they're at the Oakland Coliseum,
Totally.
I'm like, wow.
It wasn't just you. Everybody that was involved with Primus at that night was like, this is fucking happening.
And then, Pork Soda was out. I mean, it was just that was kind of like when I went, geez, because I had been working at ADA. I mean, I was with around so many up and coming bands that unless, like it was Kirk Hammett and Metallica, I wasn't too impressed with somebody's growth. You know what I mean? I know that sounds really terrible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like I said, it's just because of the scene that I was in. It just, like it took quite a bit to really impress me. You know what I mean? And impress upon me, like how big Primus had got, by that time.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a couple times, where Les was just like, like when, I'm trying to think, Todd Huth left, right?
Right.
He was just like, oh, dude, Todd's gone. There's no Primus. This is it. I'm done. And so there was a couple times, like he was just ready to kind of bail on it,
Yeah.
But he pulled through and just kept on going,
Yeah. Were you providing wise counsel in those moments?
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, Les is I think, he takes everything with a grain of salt, you know what I mean? And I if he thinks it's good advice, he takes it. I mean, his recollection of some things I think are different than mine, like, when they told him, when he gets the letter, right? I remember the letter we got from the Primates, right? And he was, that was another, time he was like kind of, a bit depressed, about the band and, what are we going to do? He's like got all this investment, T-shirts, tapes, this and that, and, we just started looking in a dictionary and I was just trying to find something that was related, relatable to that.
Yeah.
And then he's looking at, like a definition, we got my dictionary out and he's looking at a definition of primate. And it says right there, the root of primate is primus, right? And he's like, oh, that's kind of cool, And then he mentions it to Big Rick Stewart, who was a DJ at that time at the Quake, which was like another like rock alternative station in San Francisco back in those days. And Rick Stewart was like, oh, dude, that's awesome. That's like all the nerds will love that,
Huh.
Yeah.
So, and so I don't know, I mean, Les, I think he was influenced by the fact that we liked it, you know what I mean? But it was his decision. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know that Big Rick had something to do with it. That's because he's told the part about the dictionary, but that's interesting.
Oh, okay. Did he really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's interviews where he's copped to that part.
Okay.
He didn't mention it was your dictionary, though, damn it.
Yeah, asshole. God damn it. No. Well, that's what I say, like his recollection and my recollection sometimes differ. Yeah.
And then there's everybody else involved in recollections that no one can get a story straight sometimes.
Yeah.
Stuff, man. It's hilarious.
Well, now that we're all senior citizens, practically.
Yeah. There's a lot of holes there, aren't there?
Yeah.
I want to ask you about, and we were kind of going in this direction, but as the band's getting somewhere and you're working with them and you're friends with them, and we know Les brings his friends in and he gives them credit and he'll mention them on the microphone and you're in the lyrics and that sort of thing. So was there a time when you'd be accosted on the street by people without social graces who would do that thing and be like, "It's CG the Mexican"?
Never.
Oh, thank goodness.
Never. I mean, once in a while, somebody at the show might realize who I was, but that, pretty much never. Yeah.
Okay. So you retain anonymity.
That's why I never gave it, like a whole lot of credence or recognition. It was just, just even recently getting on like that Facebook group,
right.
I just said, I posted some pictures. I put Curtis Gomez, and this guy goes, "Are you CG?" And I go, "Yeah." And he's like, "Dude, you're a legend." And I'm just like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah,
Cool.
It's so strange that, and it must be strange to you, but that is, and Frankie, you might be able to corroborate this. It's that name CG. It's one of those legendary lyrical names, and so people are just humming those lyrics, singing those lyrics, and to some people, that lyric, "CG the Mexican is a friend of mine," you're their friend too. You don't know that, but they think that. It's kind of a strange thing.
I get a different warm fire every time I hear
that. What? It's funny because
I actually know CG the Mexican.
There you go.
Yeah, well,
and I was there. And I was watching Evil Dead on the couch, dude, that Les was sleeping on.
It's funny, though. A couple of years ago, Les's daughter was at a show, and Les goes, "Yeah, she thinks I'm being a racist when I say CG the Mexican." And I'm like, I go, "Nah," I go, "If you didn't know me, maybe, yeah. But I mean, like, I'm signing off on it. You're not a racist."
I was curious about that, using somebody's, ethnicity or nationality in their descriptor, but I assumed you were cool.
Like I said, when he met me, I was pretty much deep into my, cholo phase. I mean, and I still, dress pretty East Bay. I'm like, jeans and boots and bomber jackets and the
49er hat, right?
No, I don't wear 49er hats. I wear trilbies.
Nice. So speaking of those, you're talking about you post. I remember when you posted a couple of those photos on those Facebook groups, because I went, "Holy shit, that's CG." And people didn't know that. Like, I was like, you guys don't realize who this is. But you did post one.
Some did. I mean,
some
they were
did,
private messaging me on Facebook. Actually.
Oh, see, you opened the gates there.
Yeah.
Well, my ass included. I messaged you to be on here. So, but on one of them, at least, you identified Les as Peppercorn. I'm curious about that.
Okay, so that has never been a nickname for him or anything. I just thought it'd be funny to call him that on the Facebook posting.
Ah.
And so when you mentioned it, I kept with it, and I did it. I think I referenced it maybe 3 times. I just thought it was kind of funny.
That's a nice mislead, because I thought, there's something going on there that nobody knows about. I'm going to find out.
I should just start calling him that to his face.
I might start calling him that, dude.
Yeah.
You'll have no idea. That'll be great.
Peppercorn, what are you doing there, buddy? He's like, "What are you talking about, Sawyer?" See,
yeah.
You said you're the old Peppercorn.
He looks like a little black ball. Oh.
So we mentioned Toys Go Winding Down. You got that great mention in Spaghetti Western as well, sitting there stoned watching on the TV. So the theme holds.
Oh, dude. Yeah, it was bong rips. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
that lyric is the same living room apartment.
Yeah.
Toys go winding down.
Yeah.
He wrote a lot of that stuff on the couch, that he slept on and ruined. Yeah.
A lot of screwing on that couch, Siege.
Yeah, he did.
But a lot of I think what a lot of people don't know, that it's your experiences in the military that helped inspire the Sergeant Baker tune. Am I correct about that?
Yeah.
Or lyrics, excuse me.
And I'll be honest, I didn't realize that until, we were just talking about it one day, and he was like, "Oh man, it was all that stuff you were telling me about the drill sergeants and the brainwashing," and I was like, "Oh, okay," because I was just telling him about, this is actually kind of funny because we were talking about this the other night. One of the things they do in boot camp, and I mean, this was a long time ago, but they show you all these propaganda films, right? And at that time, I mean, these propaganda films were even old when I was in, so it's got John Wayne, Charlton Heston, and, and they're talking about the flag in America and, wars, and, the guys that threw themselves on grenades and got the Medal of Honor, And I told Les, I'm looking over it, and there's guys in the theater while we're watching this movie, and they're crying, "Oh, I love America." And I'm like, all right, cool. He's going to throw himself on a grenade. I don't have to worry about it, So I and I was just telling him that stuff, and then, they do, one of the things the military does, and they do try to break you down and build you back up. It's not unlike the Church of Scientology in some ways,
right. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of guys, especially that are, what I would call the combat arms infantry type guys, they're, they really try to stoke the patriotism, in them, get them fired up, because, hey, they're the ones that have to go fight,
right.
I was always in what they say, we would say in the Army, in the rear with the gear. I was the guy that was, back where there were showers and hot food, because I was the guy that had to fix stuff, So
going into the service, you knew you were going in that direction, right?
Actually, I had signed up for, a satellite school.
Okay.
And there was a big recruitment scandal at the time. And my recruiter, what they used to do was they paid recruiters a bonus for, recruiting people, especially into combat arms, right? Because who the hell wants to be, an infantry grunt, a mortarman, a machine gunner, right? Most people want to get some kind of technical skill out of it, So I signed up for the military for satellite school. And when I got out of boot camp and they were, reading our names off and, and they went, Curtis Gomez, infantry mortarman. And I go, whoa, wait a minute. What are you talking about? It's not what I signed up for. Wow. And so the recruiter had falsified a bunch of, recruitment documents because he was getting bonuses for it. And then he had left the service. He was married to a German nationalist because he was stationed in Germany at some point. And so he, just scammed the Army for all this money and then went to live in Germany.
Wow.
And so I had to go. So, I had to fight it. I mean, I had to get a lawyer, a military lawyer, and, like, hey, this isn't what I signed up for. And you could even see on the contracts where he just, scratched off stuff and then wrote my initials, to replace it, and then because they were getting all this bad, press, from the other recruitment scandals, where recruiters were giving answers to, the, as what they call the ASVAB test, it's kind of like the military skills test, to see what your level is at and stuff. So they were just doing whatever they could to recruit people and just get that extra money, Mm-hmm. And so with the scandal going on, I could hear the guys whispering in the back room. They were like, "Oh man, we better give this guy what he wants." His mom wrote, his Congress, person, and because my mom was, she really was writing like Dianne Feinstein or somebody. I can't remember who it was, but so they just went, "Okay, pick whatever school you want, but we're sorry, the satellite school already started, so you got to pick something else, So what I did was what they call special electronics, and at the time, and that was kind of like a lot of the stuff that was secret back then, and that was like night vision equipment and some of the like early mine detectors that were like detecting plastic mines and things like that.
And Les Claypool bass tone pedals and stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But yeah, so anyway, that that was kind of my entry into the military was, like
kind of off on the wrong foot, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. I mean, they even, they tried to browbeat me into being an infantry mortarman, but I just wasn't going to put up with that,
Yeah. So you definitely brought a unique perspective to it when you got out or were discharged and were telling these stories to people. So it really gives a definite. I can really see that connection between what you're telling us now and what ends up in those lyrics to something like Sergeant Baker. That's really fascinating.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that really buy into it.
Yeah.
I mean, look at America now, you know what I mean? Like all these people that are patriots, right? They're, buying into this myth that, we do, my country right or wrong and, whatever,
the people don't tread on me.
I've always been like kind of a smart ass skeptic. I was always the kid, getting kicked out of class for, being a class clown and an asshole, you know what I mean? So, it carried on right through the military.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, it sounds like you guys would have hit it off. You guys hit it off right away then, early on when you met Les, because you guys both had that bent to you.
He was a good guy. I would say, growing up, we were much more segregated. Like, in high school, the Hispanic kids all hung out with the other Hispanic kids, and we had the rockers, the stoners. I mean, everybody was in their own little clique. But after being in the military, I just realized, like, hey, it doesn't matter who you hang out with. There's good people and bad people, and Les was a good person. He was cool. He was okay by me. I was down with hanging out with him.
Nice.
You'd have ruined your couch.
Yeah.
You liked him that much. Come on over and.
Well, no, because what it was is there was somebody was coming up from Santa Cruz and they needed a place to stay. And he goes, hey, can I just flop on your couch for a couple of weeks? And it turned into about a year.
Yeah.
So
1988. I remember.
Yeah. Man. We're at the part where when we talk to people who have known Soya for a long time, I like to ask for Soya stories or Soya anecdotes. So you don't have to embarrass him, but what do you got? What do you got on Soya?
I don't think I have anything. I mean, Tim was always, hardworking guy. You know what I mean? Like just, fun to hang out with, and we're just being dudes,
Yeah.
I brought the granola, dude, and the bread.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I can't think of anything, like I'm trying to think of, it's not like I stepped on his wet sock, you know what I mean? So,
I think by the time that I was, you and Les were just about out of that apartment when I started working for Primus in 88-ish. And
I'm trying to. Oh God, yeah. I think I
think you were kind of like curtailing your. Dude, I ain't going to the show tonight, dude. I got shit.
Well, I was working with the radio station a lot, and I was like, this is really where my career is going, and I'm, like I said, the lighting paydays weren't, that great.
Yeah.
So,
my paydays weren't great, but I was seeing Primus for free every night.
Yeah. And I just had to, I was focusing on myself. Focusing on myself. And I've always told people, after being Les's boss, I can't let him be my boss, I think it kind of changes the relationship, and I mean, when you're working with him, I mean, if you're not working with him, then it's different,
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
Well,
I always cherish those moments at the apartment with the Evil Dead and the Eco Mouse playing, dude.
Oh yeah. I mean, well, man, we had quite the video collection. I mean, we were always down at the video store,
I was only there like after load in and after sound check, and we'd hang out for an hour.
And that 7-Eleven being around the corner was just such a bonus, right? Because you could just go over there and get Ben & Jerry's chips, beer, whatever.
Yeah.
What was the deal with that video collection? Because I think Matt Weiniger mentioned that, or somebody did, and said, what a video collection they had over there.
I was doing a lot of tape-to-tape stuff. I had some really high-end VCRs. And so if we rented something, I would, bust a copy of it, right? If I liked it. And, the good, the bad, and the ugly, hang them high, not just Evil Dead, right? But
yeah.
the spaghetti westerns, right? I mean, it's just
Yeah.
all that Road Warrior, Mad Max.
Yeah.
Especially Mad Max. I mean, my cousin would come over all the time, put on Mad Max. I'm like, again?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, we just watched it. You know what I mean?
That's the same as me when I'd show up and walk in and you'd be sitting on the couch and Evil Dead's still on and the pencil's going into the ankle. And I'm like, man, how many times do you watch this shit, dude? What the fuck is going on here? You guys all
when you're stoned,
it's Evil Dead, man. We're fucking playing it every
time. Yeah. But like I say though, when you're stoned, you always see something you didn't notice before. You know what I mean? It's just, so. Yeah.
CG, I'm curious if you keep up with the releases of Les and Primus. I mean, do you listen to every new album that comes out?
Yeah, usually I give it a spin. I'll be honest, the old stuff is my favorite stuff, and I tend to go for the more rhythmic jams that he has as opposed to some of the just really esoteric jamming kind of stuff.
Fire Brigade.
But that's just me. I mean, even now, like I try to listen to a lot of stuff and try to keep an open mind. But I'm telling you, man, I mean, well, look, I worked at a radio station, so I've got like, I don't know, 60,000 songs in my playlist, right?
Yeah.
I think it says I can listen to music for like 60 days or something like that. I don't know. But there's still a lot of stuff, like it takes me a while to get into like some of the newer stuff, like I'll listen to something and go, hey, well, that's cool. And I'll ask one of my kids like, oh yeah, who sings that? Oh, that came out like 5 years ago. I'm like, oh, okay. I thought I was, up on it.
You're on the cutting edge for a second.
I got the
I'm not.
It is one of those remarkable things where we kind of find ourselves stuck in a time in as far as music goes. Because I was looking at some of my music collection going, man, I kind of stopped finding new music, or at least newer artists around '05. And there aren't too many after that. That's kind of when I closed the door and when I know what I've got. And it's very rare that something filters in. Yeah.
I mean, now it's like, I'll hear something maybe on, YouTube or something. And I'll go, oh man, I'm going to buy that. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, it's not like the kind of music hoarding I was doing when I was working at Live 105, you know, because we got so much free music.
Yeah.
Because we'd get all these demos, you know what I mean? And stuff that the record companies were sending. And the radio station didn't want it, because they were playing, carts, so they just take a CD, they would transfer it onto tape, and stuff would just end up in the kitchen. So I'd go by the kitchen all the time at work and I'd see a big stack of CDs sitting there. And I didn't want to act like I was the only guy taking them. So I'd hide them under the sink and come back later, and, grab a stack of 20, and then, and if I didn't like the way it sounded, we'd take it down to the, like Amoeba and, sell them,
Yeah.
And then we'd get cooler stuff,
Right on.
Nice racket there, man.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a racket. Well, at the time I wasn't, my first radio gig, I wasn't getting paid that much.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're working at an alternative station, they almost feel like, it's your it's a privilege to work here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why we don't pay you,
Right.
I mean, there was a lot of cool things. I mean, we got passes to, comedy clubs and movie premieres, free restaurant trade, stuff
that's what
like
they
that.
paid you was perks.
Yeah, there was a lot of perks. Now,
no money.
They took all that away, though. They took all that away. The salespeople snatched all that stuff when they deregulated. I mean, radio is just a shell of itself these days. And Live 105 recently just went off the air. They turned it into, some kind of automated station, unfortunately. Oh, wow. And the Bay Area has always been known as kind of like a talk radio, pioneering radio market, and it's not anymore. They're just doing whatever they can do, and I guess from a business standpoint for them it makes sense. I mean, I don't listen to the radio hardly at all.
Right.
I mean, I've got my phone, I'm listening to my iTunes,
right,
listening to Pandora, whatever,
right.
I listen to Mike D's Echo Chamber. You ever listen to that one?
I have, yeah.
That's one of me and my wife's favorite. We listen to every single episode. It's awesome.
Yeah, some of the guys from like the Quake and have some cool stuff that's online too, so
Yeah.
I can't say I do it a lot, I'm like pretty busy lately with work, so it's like we're going into this big upgrade where they're trying to boost the power of the accelerator, and it's like $1 billion project that's started 2 years ago and doesn't even really kick off, as for the major portion of it till the end of 2025. So yeah. So it's like, we're all like really busy because we're still running, but and trying to simultaneously, do this upgrade to the accelerator.
Man.
It's crazy.
I think it's great that you went from, making a sweet custom preamp for Les Claypool to saving the world. I think you really made a leap.
The thing that's cool about it is that everything I've done in the past, because, I've got this manufacturing engineering background, the amplifier power supply thing, the RF background from working in radio, doing field service. I don't know if you guys have heard of Euphonics. They used to make consoles,
Yep.
Okay.
I have.
Yeah. So I did field service with Euphonics for a while. And then, after that, I went to MLB, did streaming. Well, actually, motion picture, then MLB. But when I went to work at the lab, I mean, almost all that background came into play, because everything that I'd done, I have something to offer them, you know what I mean? So it's really a nice fit. They call upon all my skills that I've acquired over, my 40-year career in electronics.
Yeah. Curtis Gomez, CG the Mexican, not just a stoned lyric. You are a fascinating individual, sir.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny because like I said, didn't really get much attention from the fans, And I remember one time there was this woman, she was a friend of Les's, and I can't remember her name, but I was saying something about work, and I said something about being a manufacturing engineer, and she goes, "Oh, I just thought you were one of his dumb, goofy buddies." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." Like what, and like none of us were dumb, goofy buddies. I mean, everybody's been, I would say we've all been kind of successful in our own way.
Yeah. It does seem to track that, the people especially the people that you surround yourself with, you all kind of go in a similar direction. And that crew, you guys all achieved great success in a variety of fields.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Well, to put a little cap on it, CG, thanks a lot for talking to us. It was
CG, thank
honor.
you so much for taking the time to speak with us. It was really amazing to listen to you.
That I didn't get to. I know I was kind of rambling and stuff.